Zirak Hamad is a violinist, drummer and teacher. He's originally a refugee from Iraqi Kurdistan. In 2012, he established the event called Musichistan in Birmingham to give a platform to artists to highlight their culture and talents. We're now going to see a YouTube video in which Zirak performs a work commissioned for Refugee Week 2020 in English called No One and Kas Nia.
عالم گردونه به ولاتین به مافو دربا درو به مالی هاواری ما کزراناگا دنیا زمی ما تیمرناکا مالم گردونه به ولاتین به مافو دربا درو به مالی هاواری ما کزراناگا دنیا زمی ما تیمرناکا We don't have a country in this universe. No rights, no home. We are refugees. No one listens to our words. The world will not heal our wounds. If I had a country and identity, why would I flee to another country? I would live at home so peacefully. من قرخا ولاتي خوم به خاوى الناس ناموا بيام به تيم داوايا لكوتي ولاتان خوم آرايام دجيام لنشتيمان تيم داوايا لكوتي ولاتان خوم آرام دجيام لكردستان إيمان قردونا بيوغاني ما فودر بادر وكمالي هاواري ما كزرانا دوني حزامي ما تيني مرناقا
beautiful. And everybody you speak to who knows somebody who is a refugee from Iraq always tells you how beautiful their country is. And we now come to our poetess, Jenna Plus, who loves wild places and the sea. She has 6 published collections of her poetry, the most recent one being here. Her poems reflect places she loves, as well as her career in psychotherapy. Please welcome Gemma, who will read live poems that trace the lines of life. Gemma.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me come. I suppose underlying the poetry that I write is I believe all human beings are God's children and should be treated fairly, have the same rights and responsibilities to contribute to society and have their gifts and talents recognized. And the book, A Woven Rope, is being sold in aid of children of freedom from torture. And it's doing quite well already. I think I've got about £1,000 now. I've chosen poems from the collection that show something of our journey through life, finding out who we are, who we can be, and making the difficult changes when life throws wobblies at us. The freedom to be yourself begins in childhood. A baby is learning to be a person. Net. Adrift in a sea of senses, you try out a babble of notes, clicks of contentment, full-throated roars of rage. Sounds raft together, making a singing place. You throw out pebble sounds, laugh as they splash. You crawl, stand, learn to walk. Syllables float round your head. You try to catch them, weave them together. Now you are running, whirling your net of words, flinging it over the waves, pulling in idea after idea. And then the child begins to explore, to venture out into the world. Father love. You nuzzle your head under his chin, lean against his chest, crooked in safety, absorbed in a light that crinkles your eyes. Already you cast a shadow behind you. Soon you'll push away his hand, slide off his lap, stand unsteady, legs wide as your smile. He'll watch you lose your balance, find it, lose it again. He'll follow one step behind, see you go out of sight, wait for as long as it takes for you to return. And growing into your own person isn't easy, to find out who you are. Whitewater teens. You're caught in its twist and tug, carried in a swirling flood of yearnings over hidden rocks and waterfalls. The bathroom's a chaos of dancing dreams. Friends murmur for hours behind the bedroom door. Thunderclouds threaten, then drift away. We watch from the bank, wait for you, where the river slows, deepens, and widens out. And letting go as a parent isn't easy either. Letting your child find their own way in the world. Flight. I'm at Gatwick, watching you waltzing through departures, swinging your bag. And I think of that swallow flying through the house, how I carried it, tense as a dowsing rod in my hands, how she strained against my grasp, force thrumming through her body like pent-up water, how I opened my hands and she flew, how I followed her looping dance till she was out of sight. And for a parent, the letting go is also a freedom, a new space opening up, missing you, I rest my arms on the fence rail. The dog leans against me. It's so still I feel the rise and fall of my breath. Sheep call across a sea of grass. A lamb raises its head, ears petal thin against the light. A pheasant clatters through a blaze of gorse. The morning soft as rising dough. I turn for home. The dog hesitates, then runs ahead. It's a balancing act, making a partnership work. A dilemma that comes in any relationship, the freedom to be yourself and still take your share in a partnership. How equal can that be? High wire wedding. Fear is there, waiting within the wire. He feels it through the sole of his foot, resists its churning as it rolls beneath him, bends his knees, weighs himself down, then steps out and moving towards her, arms wide as wings, while she dances the rope to meet him, white dress feathering around her. They share a rhythm, feel the wire thrum beneath them, till they meet high above the priest and make their vows. Second by second, they hold a silence strung tight between their smiles. Music drifts up like smoke. Does she now turn and lead, or does she follow him? The hem of her dress ripples in the breeze. No one moves. And sometimes life is turned upside down. This is about picking blackberries, but not really about picking blackberries. Keeping busy. September and they're ready. Nipples soft and swollen, heavy with a yeasty sweetness. Corn stubble crunches under her shoes, scratches her ankles. Air is dry as toast, humming with heat. She works the field, blue bottles bright as scarab beetles crawl over bloated berries, stumble away. Thorns pull at her clothes as she forces her way through bramble thickets. Nettle stings tingle her bare legs. Arms stained with juice, sticky and sun-weary, she idles up the lane, a trail red as blood, dripping from bulging plastic bags. She'll make jam, give it to the hospital for the staff. No need to keep any. Ask if they could use baby grows, newborn size. Newborn size. And partnerships can break down or just fade away. Relationships can rot at the base. Here someone is finding the courage to do something about it. Between the bars, it is the way in or the way out. A 5-barred gate, solid oak, weathered pigeon grey, made to last a lifetime. The start and end of her walks until today. The hanging post has rotted at the base, pulled the gate down. It lies askew, unlatched. She picks her way between the bars. She will sit him down and talk. Maybe she'll leave a note instead. And I've chosen this poem as another picture of someone facing the reality of her situation and letting go of things to make space for new opportunities. Downsizing. She begins in the kitchen, decides to give away the bowls she never filled with creamed perfection, however hard she tried. She'll keep wooden spoons, a dish to make a casserole to share with friends, mugs big enough to hold a conversation, keep in the heat of love. She'll give away the silver, glass and porcelain passed down for generations. She walks from room to room, fingers spines of books, chooses a few to anchor her. Paintings can go, but not the photographs. She leaves her wardrobe last. So many clothes no longer fit. Acceptance of her aging self comes hard. But when she lifts the bag, it's light, easier to carry now. And I believe however old you are, you still have something to give. This elderly lady is still connected to the world outside and offers something of herself. Forecast. It's a long wait while she fumbles the chain, unbolts the door and lets me into her warm clutter of living. Magazines, tissues, thermos of soup, sandwich and squash left by the morning carer. She settles back in her nest of cushions, tucks a rug round her feet, tilts her head to hear me better. And we set out, two foraging birds in a wintry field, unearthing memories, pecking at scraps of gossip, sharing berries of laughter. Slow minutes wander with us, till the light fades, the air cools, and I turn on her table lamp, draw curtains, unwrap her evening sandwich, bend and brush my cheek with hers. I merge into the rush hour traffic, catch the 6 o'clock forecast. She'll hear it too. Tonight she'll ring. Don't worry about me, I'm fine. Just be careful in this weather. And I chose this last poem because I believe, although we're uniquely special, we carry the imprint of those who were part of our lives for good or bad. We have Grandpa's nose, Mum's way of pulling at her ear when she's thinking. So this last poem, her shadows borrowing my clothes. Elbows on the table, face propped in my palms, I catch a glimpse of her reflected in the glass as I sit in Café Rouge waiting for my meal. Familiar gestures laid down in the strata of my life are reappearing in its weathering. I'm saying things she used to say to me, phrases embedded, intricate as ammonites. So much of her is in the bone of me, a shadow trace against the light. There we are.
Thank you very much indeed, Jenna.
If anybody wanted to buy the book, I'm sure that Ian would pass on my email address.
I will do indeed, yes. But thank you very much. The language was rich with images, telling a story of life. So beautifully done. Thank you. And because your sales are to raise funds for freedom of torture, I would like to read Article 5 of the UN Declaration of Human Rights. No one shall be subject to torture or to cruel, inhumane or degrading treatment or punishment. Leading us into a film from Freedom from Torture. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian, and thank you, Jenna. I think that just one point I'd like to make about that film is that what Freedom from Torture does, many will know, but they work with people who are here who have suffered torture. And to see how many of them are sort of laughing and smiling is just uplifting. So your funds are going to an absolutely brilliant cause, Jenna, and we support you in that. Astrid.
Yes, we've not just got sorry, two short films by Steve McCabe, MP for Senegal.
Hello, I'm Steve McCabe, the Member of Parliament for Birmingham Selly Oak. Can I welcome the Amnesty Festival of Social Justice and the work of Amnesty volunteers and supporters who give voice and hope to so many around the world who are deprived of human rights and social justice. I'm thinking of the prisoners in states without fair and just legal systems, those imprisoned for espousing views about freedom and human rights and democracy. The Uyghurs in China and all those prisoners in Iran, whether they be Western hostages like Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe or women deprived of their careers and rights, those detained, those executed for daring to challenge that regime, or the people of Myanmar in these darkest of times. And closer to home, those victims of modern day slavery who fall foul of organised criminal gangs and international people traffickers. Those of us lucky enough to live in democracies are quite right to protest the actions of the state when it threatens our interests. The denial of social justice, it seems to me, is a continuum which, depending on where you live, can extend from limiting the right to peaceful protest to the murder and execution of those with the courage to challenge political dictators. I hope your festival will succeed in drawing attention to the many injustices that exist. Thank you. Hello. It's taken 32 years, but experts at the UN have finally acknowledged the 1988 massacre of Iran's political prisoners as a pre-planned, orchestrated crime against humanity. I want to pay tribute to Mariam Rajavi for her persistence and determination in exposing this atrocity and seeking justice for the families of those who were killed. The late Ayatollah Khomeini, without doubt, ordered these killings. In his own decree, he called these political prisoners enemies of God who should be condemned to death. Perhaps as many as 30,000 people lost their lives. Details of the mass executions and the burials in unmarked graves and pits are still being withheld by the regime. Khomeini may be dead, but many of those who prepared and carried out his orders have risen through the ranks. Khamenei, Rouhani, Raisi, the intelligence ministry, and the IRGC commanders. They all bear responsibility and should all face justice for their part in this massacre. These are now the people we are expected to negotiate with. There can be no negotiations without an end to Iran's terrorist activities. No negotiations without an end to the ballistic missile program as well as the nuclear weapons program, and no negotiations until there is justice for those butchered by this regime. The West has already committed its own crime by turning a blind eye to these killings for 32 years. Now we must put our support fully behind the calls for justice. This case must be referred to the UN Security Council and subject to a fully independent international tribunal. It's time for justice, and it's time for the guilty to be called to account. Thank you.
That was Steve McCabe, MP for Selly Oak. And now we have a quick short film by Ilsa Daly Ward. It's an amnesty film. She reads a poem. She has written a book called Bone. She has written a memoir called The Terrible, which was published in 2018, and it won the PEN Accolade Prize.
Hello, I'm Ilsa Daly Ward, and this is my Make a Difference in a Minute poem. And that's the thing about ignorance. It can seem a lot like an innocent joke, or it can look a lot like the law. And that's the thing about ignorance. It can feel a lot like oppression. It can feel a lot like fear. And that's the thing about fear. You can feel it around your neck. And you can hear it tell you things. And that's the thing about words. They can put you out on the street. They can meet you in an alley. They can be sharp things. They can look a lot like blood. They can strike you, knock you down. And that's the thing about hands. They can be hands or they can be fists. You decide. And that's the thing about ignorance. It's a choice and it's yours every time.
Excellent. So I'm Linda from Sutton Coldfield Amnesty Group, and I've got great pleasure in introducing you to Christine Genders, who's a storyteller from the local area. She's a host at the Lichfield Storytellers. In non-COVID times, they meet at the King's Head in Lichfield. I can recommend it personally. But if you search them online, you can certainly find them with online events at the moment. So Christine also tells stories regularly at the Samuel Johnson Birthplace Museum in Lichfield. And she's been a long-term supporter of Amnesty and has been very generous with her time in this festival. So having heard her storytelling at our Sutton Coldfield event, Voices for Change, I'm really excited to hear another story. So please let Christine's story take you far away, but hit near to home. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you, Linda. Can you hear me? Are you ready for me to start?
Yes, yes, we can hear you and we can see you.
Right. My story takes us into troubled times, unruly times. The farmer in his field thought he could hear shouting on the wind, and then on the wind he smelt the smoke, and he turned and he saw the next farm along, the farm that belonged to the shepherd, was on fire. He ran down there. The raiders had taken the livestock. They'd set fire to his home and left the shepherd for dead. The farmer took the shepherd and cared for him. But when the shepherd was well, he had no means to keep himself with his livestock dead. And the farmer said, "Look, I'm getting older. I really need help. Will you stay and help me on the farm? And there'll be enough for both of us." And that's what they did, each man grateful to the other. And they enjoyed each other's company. They got on well. They got on well until the day the shepherd was ploughing and the plough hit something. And when he looked, there was a terracotta pot in the ground, and in the crack he could see the gleam of gold. And he took that pot back to the farmhouse, and he and the farmer tilted it, and a stream of gold coins poured onto the table. 15 gold coins. And the farmer said to the shepherd, "What will you do with it?" And the shepherd said, "I won't do anything with it. It's yours." The farmer said, "You found it." The shepherd said, "I found it on your land." And for the first time, the two men were arguing. And at that moment, there was a knock at the door. When they opened it, there was a young man there. He looked exhausted. He asked for a drink of water. And the farmer went to his well that was always cold and clear and brought him water. But they brought the young man into the house. They sat him down, and he told them over a meal that his village had been attacked by the sort of raiders who had attacked the shepherd's farm. When he had come back to consciousness, the village was gutted with fire. There was no one alive, and he had just turned his back and begun to walk. They listened. And when he'd finished his story, he looked at the two men. He said, "But when I knocked on the door tonight, I thought I heard you two arguing." And the men looked at each other, and then they said, "Well, yes, we were." And they told the young man why. And they asked his advice. "What do you think we should do with this gold?" And the young man said, "Split it in two. Each of you have half." And the shepherd said, "No, because it all belongs to him." And the farmer said, "No, because it's all the shepherd's. He found it." And the young man said, "If you really feel like that, I think you should give it back to the earth." "You mean we should just rebury it?" "No. When I was walking on that road, I wanted rest and shade so badly. I wanted something to quench my thirst. Why don't you get land and irrigate it and plant trees so that someone coming along like I was could sit in the shade of the tree, could pluck the fruit and quench their thirst?" And the shepherd said, "Well, the land is mine." And the farmer said, "And I have a well that we could use the water to irrigate. Will you travel to the city for us and bring back trees, bring back saplings that we can plant? We'll start to prepare the ground while you're away, because it will take you about a week." And that's what was agreed. On the 4th day of walking, the young man could just see the city in the distance. And almost at the same moment that he caught sight of the city, he heard birdsong. And as the song grew louder, it seemed so much more than birdsong. It seemed a song of joy. And he turned, and there was a merchant with horses that had packs on them. But the first horse had rough wooden crates, and those crates were stuffed with birds, no room for them to spread out their wings. And yet it was those birds that were singing. And the young man stopped the merchant. He said, "You've got to let those birds out or they'll die." And the merchant said, "What does it matter if they do? I'm going to sell them to the king. He'll be eating them. They'll be for his kitchen." The young man was horrified. He said, "You cannot destroy the beauty of their singing. Look how beautiful their feathers are, for they were iridescent, shot through with gold." He said, "You cannot destroy that beauty." And the merchant said, "I'll get good money for it." The young man said, "How much will the king give you?" "Probably about 10 gold coins. I'll give you 12. No, I want the king to know that I can get goods like this. I'll give you 15 gold coins if you let me set them free." And so the merchant accepted the money, and the young man broke open those cages and began to lift the birds out. They were so squashed they couldn't just fly away at first. And a boy came and helped him. And the boy noticed, almost as the young man took out the last of those birds, how his face fell. And the boy said, "What is it? What's the matter?" And the young man said, "That money wasn't mine. It was to buy saplings, not birds." And the boy said, "But you've done a good thing." And so the young man turned and he began walking back to the farm. But he began to hear the bird song, and suddenly he was walking in shade as the birds flew overhead. That night when he stopped, they roosted with him. And they flew on again with him the next day. They flew until the 4th day when he said, "Look, that's where we're going, that farm over there. You'll be able to rest when we get there." And almost as soon as he had said that, the birds flew away in a different direction. And so he arrived back at the farm with nothing but his story. And the farmer and the shepherd listened to him. And when he'd finished, the farmer reached, and from the young man's hair, he entangled a feather, a beautiful iridescent feather shot with gold. And he said, "Such birds must be truly beautiful." And that's all that was said. The next morning, the shepherd and the farmer took the young man to show him the work they'd begun, irrigating the land. And as they stood there looking, they heard the swooshing of wings, and they turned, and there were those beautiful birds. But they weren't singing, for their beaks were carrying saplings, 2 or 3 birds to each sapling, and they came and they placed them down. And the farmer and the shepherd and the young man began to plant those saplings. And almost as soon as they were in the ground, they began to grow, so that by evening, they were big enough for the birds to roost in them. By the next day, the travellers coming along that road could sit in their shade and pluck the fruit to quench their thirst. And the travellers told stories of this beautiful forest where all day the birds sang a song of joy, where at night there was a silence of deep peace. And there were those who went to look for that forest and found it. And some of them stayed there just a short time. Some of them stayed there longer. And some of them never left. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. That did transport us away.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine. Thank you.
Thank
If I
you
hand
so
over
much.
to John, I think if John is doing the next introduction.
I am indeed, yes. Have you missed me, folks? Have you missed me? It just shows you how good people have been to us and for us. And I know that story Christine devised and prepared especially for today. So, and we get that throughout, particularly throughout the rest of the evening. So there's some fantastic stuff coming up. Our next guest was going to be on much later, but then when we did the timing, it was too late because today is her birthday. And under the new rules, she can actually meet up with some friends later. So we threw the program up in the air and it came down like this. It's a comedian. Somebody's going to cheer us up. Pixie Vicky McWinyers, lives in Birmingham with a son and a cat. She's a musician and poet, and she writes from the heart, as you will see or hear. Well, both, I suppose. It's the human experience writ large and very much in your face. And in our presence this evening, please welcome Pixie Vic. Hello, Pixie Vic. Where are you?
Hello, thank you for having me.
There
It's
you are.
nice to be here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, that's good. I've worked out the technology is not my friend often. So yes, thank you. I am Vicky, or Pixie Vic, and well, I'm here to talk about women's rights. Really, that's what I talk about a lot. So that being the case, oh, and also I would like to say that I'm an autobiographical poet. So everything you hear this evening is stuff that's actually happened to me, and I occasionally say things that are funny. So I do hope that you enjoy it. I'm going to start you off as I mean to go on, and the title of this next poem I wrote last year when we were in the original lockdown, and I wrote it in response to a message from a complete stranger. The title is very self-explanatory. It's called "It's Only My Cock, Bab, Get Over It." So, back in those days of isolation when we were cocooning on our only way to make new connections were from the magic of our phones. Now, I found my Facebook feed was full of new requests from a melting pot of people, but mostly blokes I'd never met. And because I am a friendly person, on my kindness I rely, some of these I responded to, but others I just let pass by. So, cue a few days later, my notifications are set to push, and I've got 20 or so messages which have sent my poor brain into mush. And there, in amongst the chaos that my phone now represents, was a standout statement that started with, "Do you own a tent?" Well, that got my attention because I do indeed own one of these, and I'm curious as to understand how this question came to be proposed. And this is where it takes a turn. And to be fair, one I should have seen because we were all searching for amusement while locked in quarantine. He said, "I have an extra tent pole, should you need it for the night, and my wand is slightly bendy. It will hit your clit just right." Oh God. I said, "That's not what I'm after, so I thank you, but it's not for me. Besides, I don't really know you, and you live in Coventry, so I'm going to go to bed now." "Don't go," came his response. "My cock wants to say goodnight before you say goodbye." "No," was my response to that. It was firm and to the point. I didn't think I needed to worry that this would somehow disappoint, and yet it didn't matter. And as I watched in incomprehension, upon my phone in Technicolor appeared his knob at full attention. For fuck's sake, the mind boggles. So I said, "I'm going to have to block you now because uninvited dick pics is not something I'll allow." And his response to this was priceless. "It's only my cock, Bab," he said. "Get over it," like somehow this would change my mind, and that the blocking of him and his penis was perceived to be unkind. And so blocked he did become, and now I'll never know what other pearls of wisdom he thought he might bestow. So there is a moral to this poem, which I hope has entertained. I feel that it's unnecessary and it shouldn't need to be explained that although I am a friendly person, unless I've asked specifically, a picture of your penis is not what I want to see. And so, whether we're in confinement or another lockdown we will begin, yes, attempt to keep your spirits up and search for enlightenment from within. And please refrain from sending, even if you feel alone, a picture of your penis to a poor unsuspecting phone. Thank you. So I do think, thank you. So I think, uninvited dick pics is not really anything any woman wants to see on their phone, but particularly if they have a very curious child, which I do. So I'm a single mum. He's a teenager now, but he's still very curious and he asks a lot of questions. So this next poem it goes out to any parents out there. You might recognise some of these things, and it's about all the daft things he's asked me over the years. And this is called Unanswerable Questions. Mummy, why are cows called cows? Why is broccoli green? Why is the sun so far away? Why can't God be seen? Where do the clouds go at night? Can I drink my wee? If I eat an apple core, will inside me grow a tree? Why does cabbage smell of poo? Why don't cats have wings? Have you ever seen an alien? What is a bottom ring? Why don't you have a penis? When will my boobs grow? Did you bite me when you swallowed me to get me in your tummy down below? Can I marry William? What is kissing? What is sex? Why can't I look at your vagina? Now, these questions, they do perplex. Now, sometimes I have an answer, but I often have to say, I need to think about that one, baby. Can you ask me on another day? But the hardest one to date, which completely threw me, I admit, was his most recent question. As I was sitting down to knit, he came and sat beside me and turned to me and said, Mummy, why is there a box of willies hidden underneath your bed? Thank you. So I thank you. I do believe that every woman should have a box of willies hidden somewhere in the house, whether it's under the bed or in the kitchen, wherever, particularly if they don't have access to the real thing, or if the real thing that they have access to isn't up to very much. And so this next poem is about that, and this is called The Master of the Ceremony. Size doesn't matter. Or at least we like to think that the contents of your trousers aren't here to keep us in the pink. So whether you're a Moby Dick or have a captain in your pants, a button or a mushroom, it's what you do with it that counts. Believe me, there's nothing worse than when you've committed to engage in some adulting activities and you reach inside the cage to unleash the beast, but your hands can't seem to find the member that you're looking for. Now, I don't mean to be unkind, but imagine as I continue in my exploration down below, and somehow I'm hoping I'm mistaken and I've somehow just found his toe, but no, this is his penis. But like I said, it doesn't matter because a man who is intelligent surely has some other skills that he can offer. Well, it's safe to say he didn't. And after inhaling half my boob, he valiantly tried to insert himself into my anticipating tube. Is it in? I can't tell. The thoughts run through my head as I try to find the politest way I can to remove him from my bed. Now, the same is true in the reversal of this story. And I once came across a monster that belonged in a laboratory. Dear God, what is that and where do you think it's going? I can feel my cervix shrinking as I watch his tickler growing, and he's so proud of his appendage, doesn't seem to realise that my vagina needed extra care to accommodate his size. So yet again, a lack of knowledge and care and due attention proves that size doesn't matter, and nor do your dimensions, because even a perfect pork sword will fail if it's attached to a man who later proves himself to be a delusional fucking twat. So this is a cautionary tale to all those who own a trouser stake. Size really doesn't matter, so don't make this huge mistake. Whether you are gay or straight, heed this testimony and pay attention to the detail, and then you'll be the master of the ceremony. Thank you. Okay, yes. So I realise it's beginning to sound like I've never had good sex, which is not true. So I have had plenty of good sex. And this next poem is about sex. It's also about finding love, which, you know, and it's a bit of a fairy tale for grown-ups. So again, self-explanatory by its title. This is called Unexpected Orgasms at the Hand of a Secret Pirate. This poet has a tale to tell, and one I think that you'll enjoy. And contrary to its title, it does not include a buzzing toy. So, as with all good fairy tales, our heroine, that's me, was sent a message from the universe to fulfill her destiny. Living in her castle, a 2-bed terrace near a wood, she was happy in her single life. She was beautiful and good. She had blindly turned her back on her quest to find Prince Charming because, let's be honest, shall we, that journey had been quite alarming. Full of big pretenders who had answered to her call that was stuffed with false bravado and whose swords were far too small. There'd been jesters, scholars, minstrels who couldn't follow through, a philosopher of fine wines, full of cork, but had no screw. So she'd settled for enchantment, seeking pleasure from herself, switching up her energy with a battery-operated elf. However, all the while, she was ignoring what was obvious to others, the source of her contentment she'd overlooked to seek another. Quiet and unassuming, he had listened to her woes until one day his identity he decided to expose. You see, he was a secret pirate, hidden in plain sight, with magic hands and a golden tongue that were a surprise and a delight, who took her on adventures above all her expectations, more wonderful and amazing than anything she could imagine. He was everything she needed, sat right underneath her nose. And suddenly it all made sense. And it only goes to show that when you surrender to the universe, she will rise to the occasion and deliver what you're asking for without any explanation. So be open to this journey, because she might surprise you with your fate and perhaps an unexpected orgasm at the hand of a secret pirate. Thank you. So this is it for me. This is my final one. So, and I don't feel like I've said vagina enough this evening. And I think I was specifically employed this evening to say vagina a lot. So I'm going to do this final poem, which is my stand for women's rights. And I wrote this a few years ago when the BBC dared to hire a female Doctor Who. And suddenly there was mass controversy across the world, which I found quite disturbing. So this is called There's Nothing Finer. There's nothing finer than a vagina. Yes, go ahead and snigger. And yet half the population has one hidden in her knickers. And yet to the unenlightened, which to be fair is mostly men, a cock is far superior than the gorgeous hen. To them, the penis is the mightier. It means you don't drive like a twat, that you can make those big decisions, rule the world and all that. Well, as the owner of a pussy, vajayjay or bearded clam, I'm going to clear this up for you in the only way I can. Vaginas are simply awesome. Far from a limitation. I mean, let's be honest, a vagina is responsible for our own creation. A vagina is not a hindrance, not just a bleeding hole, nor a place to briefly visit or somewhere to leave your tadpoles. It is an amazing creature, not one to be despised. I mean, we all know during labour it can grow to twice its size. Now, Cleopatra, Joan of Arc, Queen Victoria and Old Queen Bess, Boudicca and Great Catherine were each impressive leaders who wore a dress. Amelia flew aeroplanes. Mary Curie helped find a cure. Pankhurst took on the establishment, all daughters who were cocksure. And the teams of British women who play rugby, cricket, football consistently bring home trophies, and yet a vagina is still a downfall. So please don't get me started on the equality of pay, because you'll never shut me up and we'll be sitting here all day. So I will bring this to a close. My parting line is this. If we can elect a cunt to run the country, why the fuck can't a vagina drive the TARDIS? Thank you very much. So that's it from me. I've been Pixie Vic, and enjoy the rest of the evening. We've got some fabulous people coming up, I can see from the schedule. So thanks ever so much for having me. Love you all. Hope to see you in real life at some point in the future.
Thank you, Vic. Thank you, Vic. Well, I bet, folks, you didn't expect that.
Sorry.
No, don't apologise. That was quite a change, and got us all up. We've all been sitting. Some of us have been sitting here for 10 hours nearly. So it woke us up. I don't know what I've been sitting on anymore. But anyway.
Oh, bless you.
Thanks very much.
No, thank you for having me. Take care.
And thanks for your support for coming. Have a lovely evening and happy birthday from everybody here.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Have a good time. Your friends will anyway. Well, there we go. And she brought her own audience by the sound of it. That's handy too. Okay, there we go. Something in your face for change. Maybe amnesty should be more pushy like that. Right? Go, well, get him. Ladies and gentlemen, all the way from his starring role in Playing Fair for Fun, the children that we had earlier in the day, we welcome back another former Tiddlywip, or whatever we called him, Poet Laureate. Is he there? Matt, are you there? Oh, he was a minute ago on the phone. Matt? Mr. Windle.
I am.
I'm
here, mate.
Why can't we see you?
Can you hear me? Can you see me? You all good? Wow. Okay.
Oh, there you go. There. So, yeah, so we'll get a big picky of you. And ladies and gentlemen, you'll know Matt Windle, I hope. Matt Windle is a Birmingham Poet Laureate of a few years ago. He was actually both the young Poet Laureate when he was a young teenager and then became the adult Poet Laureate. I don't call it that. Later. So he's been laureating all over the place. But he now does superb work with children and young people in schools. And you see stuff on his Facebook and thank you letters from teachers and students and pupils. So he is an accomplished young man. He's also, I have to do a plug, a boxer, as you know. And he's got a fight on June the 11th. So we wish you well. It's all the way over in Sheffield. So we'll organise a minibus or even a big bus. And we'll hope to see you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Matt Windle.
Thank you. Well, what I'm going to do, because we're a little short on time as well, the 3 poems that I was going to perform, I'm just going to perform them straight through. I'm not going to explain any of them or anything like that. I'm just going to go right through. The 3 poems are called Hurricane Matthew, Shaken Snow Globes, and Shooting Star. And I hope you enjoy them. Do something you shouldn't, like fall in love with me. Go against all advice to the highest of low points. Sometimes time can be the client of no point, and all signs seem to point towards anywhere but here. They point towards anywhere with fear, and I'm nearing the point of distance. But I will kiss every imperfection that you affectionately neglect and pay attention to the pieces that you shy away from. I am not ashamed of your unholy parts. I have them too. I am connected to the once lived and the unthought of by the pinpoke pages above. So when the night sky allows us, let's gaze at the stars until they change. And that way, no matter where in the world we separately may be, our view should remain the same. Now stare hard. Search for our reflections in the moon, and I'll do it too. I'll be your drunken text, but some repentantly regretful, and the memories that you wish to shed which are unforgettably forgetful. I'll take you places where I shouldn't kiss you, and do it anyway, so that each day you visit you will taste me, a little like that ulcer that you shouldn't tongue, but do. I'm wrong for you, in every right way imaginable. I will give you butterflies that refuse to fly away. Take interest in your interests so that when you walk away, you'll be forced to think of me. When doing the things you love the most, you'll haunt my thoughts. My presence will linger like a ghost that's passed, grasping onto fate that was never supposed to last. We will be a distant lover's theme song, sent from the waves of smooth FM, describing feelings so rough that you'll be back there in a moment. You'll be trapped by the median of too fast and slow motion. I will open statues of independence for the final storm that hit like a swarm that has kissed pressures of differences with waves goodbye. The coldness of shoulders that sculpted from ice, you're a dust devil. I'm a Windle, and I'll be living proof as to why they name hurricanes after people. Because even shaken snow globes come to know the joys of peace, a change in time, much better days, an iron with a crease. To see the smooth, we must encounter rough. To have the highs, we need the lows. What picks us up when we are down more than the chimes of hope? Incentives keep our focus on the tracks of moving forward. Endless possibilities give us light when times are tortured. They are whispered promises yet unfulfilled. But we keep the faith in their potential, a blaze that drives our heart and will with a mind that's existential. You can feel the hands of time slowly unbind our feet, as even shaken snow globes come to know the joys of peace. A product built for purpose still has the ability to adapt, a force of evolution as our body soon reacts. The action of internal conflict battles to and fro, and by challenging our inner fears, we find the room for growth. So the countdown continues when the worst of days retreats, because nothing lasts forever. Even shaken snow globes come to know the joys of peace. And prior to your existence, a portmanteau of persons wouldn't have made sense to me. And though its purpose is clouded, I guess this was meant to be. Every reason for a thing. Every kingdom needs a king, and even freedom costs something. Shooting stars stand out in familiar skies. We see them as beautiful. We think them unique, so that you and me can close our eyes, make a wish before it's gone again, just as quickly as it came in, all whilst barely even noticing the 3 stars of Orion, the moon even, the constellation of Andromeda and Pegasus. Instead, we have gone with our nemesis. We are ignoring the supremacists that's hiding in plain night. It's the easy come, easy go that attracts our attention and catches the eye. But the nightfall glow that I wish to behold doesn't wish to be held. I tried once, burnt my fingertips, which turned hindered bits into splintered fists. I haven't touched the same since. My sense of humour laughs at itself with smile shapes that were welded by teardrops, but fear not, because I've realised that it wasn't even a star anyway, just a hollow name. So that it wasn't even a start, it was just tomorrow's way of preparing I for an unknown you. It was a crucible of sorts that I was condemned to go through. I know that I promised not to write a poem about you, but 3 lines won't hurt. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed those pieces.
Thank you, Matt. That was lovely. There we go. There's a bit of clapping going on. That's the trouble with this technology. You can't clap. Well, you can stick a little yellow symbol up, but we do appreciate it, and thanks a lot. You did lovely stuff. I'm always amazed, both Matt and Vic, how these guys can just remember all this stuff. And Matt, but and Vicky write it as well. So what creativity, and for them to bring it along and share it tonight. When we believe artists should be paid, they're really good to join our community or be part of our community and share what they have and what they create and what they do. So thanks, Matt, on behalf of everybody here and everybody in the audience. That's brilliant. It falls to me now, looking at our little program, not a big program, just to say thank you and to welcome you. Had we stuck to the timetable, to sort of welcome you to the evening, if you like. But we really must just take a pause to thank, first of all, everybody being involved in setting this up. We've got friends, as you picked up during the day, who've been introducing and chairing different sessions, from Amnesty Brum, from Bourneville, from Sutton Coldfield, from Windle, from those Amnesty groups. Pete Doubtfire, would you just put yourself on the screen a minute, please? Because he won't want to. Pete Doubtfire, Mr. Doubtfire, where are you? Come on, there he is. This guy has been looking after the IT behind the scenes all day, and I want everybody to give him a big round of applause, because not only is he the most patient, calm person I've ever met, but he's extremely skilled, and he's solved so many problems, not just today, but earlier in the week. So thank you very much. He, of course, is the glorious leader of the beautifully named Amnesty Brum, but the Central Birmingham Amnesty. And we want to wish them well in all their endeavours too. And I think after this experience, if you take the positive side of it, we'll all be working together more as amnesty groups in Birmingham. We tended to do our own thing, but Pete using the technology and us using our willpower have brought us together for this festival. So thanks very much. Thanks to Aston Villa because they provided the platform, and we've got the technology which we've been working on and living on, it seems, for ages. Thanks to Printigo. Do you like our little caps? Printigo made them. These have gone out all over the country, well, all the Midlands, the East, West and South Midlands Festival. People are wearing them all over the place. Designed by one of our colleagues, friends in Stamford, Stamford and Rotherham did the branding. So thanks there. We've got some music coming up, but I don't know. I was just asking Pete whether we've got a soapbox that we haven't watched yet.
Yes, we can drop one of those in now.
Soapboxes, for those of you who weren't here earlier, and if you don't know, are when we started this, the idea was speaking up for social justice, and we asked people to stand on soapboxes. Then we all had to lock ourselves in houses instead. So what we did is digital soapboxes. And here's a little film, it's only a couple of minutes, of some people who said what social justice means to me.
For me, social justice means that I see each individual as unique and of equal value. All human beings are God's children and have the right to be treated fairly, have their responsibilities and their gifts valued and able to contribute to society.
For me, social justice means the state and society treating people fairly and equally without discrimination of any kind, and we as individuals also taking on that responsibility in the way we act towards each other.
Social justice to me means building inclusive communities that welcome everyone with warmth, understanding and compassion.
Social justice is not something we think about every day, but when forced to think about it and its effect, I cannot help but think about its impact on individual. Normally, those referred to the working class and underclass. I think ultimately it's about sharing the world's resources. But while that might not be, or should I say, until that happens, we still have the opportunity, we still can create the opportunity to share with our fellow human beings. Sometimes the sharing is conversation. Sometimes it's about sharing food. Sometimes it's about sharing aspects of our culture. But the idea of communicating and engaging with fellow human beings on a one-to-one basis is an essential part of living.
Thanks, Pete. It's interesting that that was Jenna at the beginning, of course, who we heard earlier, and the second person, the man with the greying hair, not surprising, is Ian Myson, who is the guy from Banbury in Oxfordshire, who has, if you like, coordinated the whole festival. So he's been hugely busy for 3 months on and longer on getting the whole festival together. And don't forget, you can go to the festival website, just Google Amnesty Central England Festival. Any Amnesty Festival of Social Justice will get you to the full programme. Still two weeks, a bit more to go. And of course, then there was Vanley Burke. You'll recognise him, some of you. Vanley is going to be at another festival event. I was going to say organised by Bourneville, which it was, but suddenly after today, I think everybody's just organising these things together. I think that groups are beginning to mesh. Oh look, Martin's got his cap, and we're working together more. Vanley's on the 21st of May in conversation with Claire from Bourneville, and hopefully we'll hear him a bit more distinctly on that occasion. Although actually a lot of the hiccups there in the sound were actually him pondering and thinking carefully what he was going to say. Right, so that's some thank yous. Friends, I don't know if I've missed anybody or left anybody out. You want to chip in, you're welcome, because I know a lot of people have helped in front of and behind the scenes.